America called me and I came. Providence. A father of mine, a German named Oskar Menil, had drowned and left me in control of his refinery. I didn't know much about factories, but I had my intuitions, and was anyways glad to leave Paris, where my life as a mannequin had become too difficult and lucrative to still feel as free and stupid as I needed it to. So I arranged to spend a month in Providence, getting my head around the assets newly assigned me. At the end of the month, I decided I'd sell it all away to the first buyer. That money then could go towards finally pacifying the creditors that had run me out of London back when I was still in school. Maybe I'd even go back. Finish school. Finish something, for once. From the window of my father's room, I could see the factory's triple smokestack. And along the river, too, where I walked most mornings. One of many habits picked up from Mother Rabbit. I kept an eye on those chimneys as I walked and considered my new domain. No smoke rose. Oscar's death had been a mystery. His life, too, as I discovered, slipping into it. The factory seemed to me impossibly complex and understaffed. Besides me, only a few people worked there, all distractible and slow. They brought phone chargers with them from station to station and spent hours in the bathroom or in the side yard, eating and smoking meat and cigarettes. For my part, I was not willing to understand how the parts connected to each other, and since no one worked, I was unable to discover this by observation. Not so surprising, if you knew me. Always struggled with hard things. In one chamber, with an unnatural dark aspect, despite its perforation by many large and largely unsealed windows, molds made from what the foreman called volcanic rubber were stacked to chest height. It stank biological. The foreman tapped me on the shoulder and pointed up. Monsieur Menil was expanding into jewelry, he said. A few months before his death at the bridge celebration, he had everything installed. I nodded, but the meaning of the hanging boards didn't land on me. The molds had all been cast shut, by accident, according to the foreman. It's just knockoff stuff, like costume stuff, he said. Knockoff? I asked. Yeah, he said. Copies and impressions. Now, I don't know much about refinement. I admit it freely. But I feel safe attributing this explanation to some kind of sexism on the part of the foreman, Rien, who was French-Canadian, which is not a great sign, and unnaturally ugly, even by the standards of an American city. I mean, everyone knows molds are for taking impressions and making copies. But for weeks after, even as I tried to resist the trap laid by Rien, laid practically under me where I stood, my curiosity about the forms hidden inside my dead father's molds grew. Not wanting to satisfy his assumption that the only part of the factory that would interest the mademoiselle was the jewelry operation, I searched for another informant. I soon took the landscaper, a stout Macedonian woman named Petra, into my confidence, hoping to likewise enter hers. She'd become obsessed with upcycling after attending a lecture series somewhere on the hill, and ranted about the econocene, about the lives of metals and plastics and metalloplastics. It seemed she was remembering or inventing details as she spoke. She held my wrist between forefinger and thumb, delicate as a nurse, and would tighten her pinch around any hairpin turn her excavation might take. Concrete is the one hand, mademoiselle, and concretion another. When I eventually asked about the jewelry, she just grimaced and began an elliptical answer about expressivity. She showed me an installation she had overseen at the factory breakwater. She talked about snakes, gooseneck barnacles, and pinna. Pinna, she kept saying that, but she didn't know the word in English. I asked again about the jewelry. She sighed. A year before he died, she said, your father called a meeting after we returned from the holiday break. This past Christmas Eve, he announced, he had a dream. He was walking along an overgrown path in a world without day and night. There was a gentle wind. Everything waved. A faint rushing sound developed along the path. Cliffs. Just like that. I was aware, though, he told us, she told me, that the height presented no danger. So he drifted downwards to a neckline, a choke in the breast. From that pinpoint overlook, he spied a bather, topless, wading out. Who he was, looking back. And looking back from back closer. The wind leaned him back with the layers of shale, emerging gneiss, against that pinpoint. Leaned with the grass, but against the pinpoint. As the bather, into the bather, dissolved. He passed through minerals, through all textures of record. He saw how all the scales fell, compounded and transformed. At least in that world. That world wherein he found the factory in a state of nature. This was what he needed to tell us. It was all there. The same rooms, the same order. Only it hadn't come out from the mountain yet. I no longer know, he said, whether the operation of this refinery will save mankind. But, friends, I have the unpleasant sense that it will not. So if I change, forgive me. It may be necessary going forward to act differently. And the meeting was adjourned. Soon after, he went away to Jamestown on a research trip and returned with garbage bags full of shells. He ordered molds made. He spoke about protection, and I thought he was going to make amulets. But he always had the molds cast shut, like he was trapping something. When the work was completed, he organized a celebration. I think you know the rest. The river, the bridge. You don't get out the way you came in. The Macedonian left me to think, but I didn't want to think. I was disgusted by the factory and by Providence and its people, places, and things. I wanted to swim. Of course, I wanted to understand my strange father, but not by thinking. This curse pulled me to Jamestown. Do you remember Jamestown? It's still there. An island with many distinct and indistinct areas. And seabirds. Once, I knew a woman, Bissa, who was turned into a seabird by someone. But, God, now I can't remember who. Not a strange thing. The birds were carrying shells from the bay over to the road to crack them by dropping them on the asphalt. Human behavior. My father, when I'd last seen him, was for all practical purposes a little boy. Rough hair, flushed cheeks, stems and skin stuck in his teeth always. A boy. That's how I will always remember you, any of you. As soon as something leaves my field of vision. A boy. A boy was there that left. All not present. A boy. Say I. It wasn't always a boy, I know that. Presumably he was turned into one by someone. Maybe his father, or his father's father. But like before, all that lies past the last advancing wave. Like before. Before, I stood before my father, the judge. An invisible boy, with all faces inward, as inverted normals. Said I. In Jamestown, there was a convention at the cove for scuba divers. Everyone was condensed into a small area. The chatter disturbed my not thinking, so I walked off. Followed some other girls my age to a more private beach. The sun was out in evidence, and I was looking at shells, trying to generate an atavistic aversion in line with what Oscar must have felt. I got nowhere. I felt nothing. I felt terrible. And it began to rain. My procedure, although it doesn't work, is not actually strange. I'm not stupid. I want to understand things. My father, my world, coast life. I try just like anyone else. But everything's too large. So I take parts away, however I can, and try again to understand. Fall short again. Try again. Fall. Again. Again. And again. Until the frame fills up. January, February, March, April, May, June.